Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Set Lusting Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. We are getting off the Springsteen train, though I'm sure he will come up, as he often does. I am talking to my new friend, C. So, C, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jesse. Great to meet you, my man.
Yeah, great to meet you. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Yes, sir. I guess the Cliff's Notes. I'm an Australian living in Canada for the last 15 years. I moved here as I make hip hop music, and my brother and I had a small little label deal in 2009. So we moved here 2010. Yeah, so we've been doing music for since 2001, 2002, long time. The other stuff, I have a craft beer podcast, which is this is a set where I'm at right now called BOS Podcast. And the other thing is I run a social media agency with my partner that's been 10 years as well. So those are the three things, I guess, that make up my life these days.
The three legs of the tripod, so to speak, that makes up C.
I like that. I'm going to use good metaphor. I'm going to use that.
Oh, good. Lot to go with, but we're going to start out at the beginning. I always
Yes.
love growing up in Australia. What part of Australia and what kind of music was your family listening to?
So I'm from Melbourne, Australia, which is, funnily enough, it wasn't the most populated city, but now it is, which
Okay.
is glorious. It was always second to Sydney, but it was the home of culture. Growing up, my parents were into relatively eclectic stuff. I'm not sure if you've heard of this gentleman. His name is John Farnham. He was like a Aussie, he's still around. He's like an Aussie legend, like one of those really like local
Okay.
like dudes and stuff. So that was the first concert I ever went to. So mum was obsessed with him. He was like a probably a god in the 70s and 80s to Aussie women. So he was played a lot. Dad always liked things like a bit of everything. He had records from like the Commodores and Michael Jackson and Bryan Adams, Simon and Garfunkel. I'm just trying to picture his record collection. Like a bit of everything. It was pretty wide, a lot of radio stuff. So music wasn't like the focus of it, but for my brother and I, we made it a lot the focus. Exposed to a lot of different stuff.
Older or younger brother?
Younger.
Okay. So were you the one leading? Were you the one influencing him?
For the most part, but he was equally as into it. Like we both rap, but he is also a producer and an audio engineer. So it's almost arguably he even took it deeper than I did, whereas I kept it. I did the business stuff. So I did the business and we both did the vocals and stuff like that. So I think initially it would have been me, and then he got more and more into it. So it was, I don't know, 1991 to Dangerous album, like dancing in the living room to that. I was also obsessed with, I started playing guitar when I was 9, and Guns N' Roses was like my jam. So
Mhm.
having Slash on like on the Michael Jackson album was super cool and stuff like that. So just being, yeah, expo him and I mostly bouncing it off each other. I think as I guess I was older, so I was probably leading the charge. Now, I hadn't thought of it. Now you mention it, and then it was nice to have at least someone at home to who appreciated it as much as I did.
I've been doing this, I'll be 10 years, and
Congrats, man.
one of the trends I see is siblings.
Okay.
That often, if you're the oldest, you tend to influence the younger brother, though sometimes it goes younger sister goes the other way. And then other times you'll actually get a rebel, like the older brother is really into heavy metal or hip hop, and the younger brother will go toward grunge
Hmm.
or jazz, just this kind of as a finding their own path. So I always think that's
Interesting.
interesting how the siblings work this out.
Yeah. Did you have any situations like that? Do you have siblings that?
Yeah, so not by design, but my parents, me and my siblings are 5 years apart.
Okay.
So then my sister is 5 years younger than me, and then my brother was 5 years younger than her.
Huh.
So there was this kind of not quite a generational, but different, right? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so we did
I can
not
see
have
that.
that. Yeah, it was when I joke about it, and it's only partly joking. I grew up in a family that listened to both music, country and Western, to do the Blues Brothers joke. Yeah, I grew up in a home that nothing but country music was played.
Hmm.
Maybe some 50s rock and roll. My mom loved Fats Domino and Bobby Darin, but
Okay.
mostly it's Merle Haggard, Johnny Cash, Charlie Pride, just whatever what it was always on the country station. And so I discovered my own music, rock and roll, with an AM clock radio. All of a sudden, because
definitely.
then you could control that, right? You had that, and you could find the local AM rock and roll station and listening to it. And I don't know if you guys had something similar to Casey Kasem growing up,
I
but
know who that is.
yeah, Sundays after church, you're listening to the American Top
Yep.
40.
I think
Yes.
I listened to the exact one. Was that, I'm not sure if we're similar age. Was that like early 90s?
They changed it, but they started in the 70s and I was a high
Oh, I
school.
see.
Yeah, I graduated in 77. I'm older than Dirtsy. And yeah, so I grew up with this
Hmm.
huge eclectic of the radio. You could hear Foreigner, Ray Stevens, and then Barry White, and then Casey and the Sunshine Band, and then Queen, and then just on, all these different sounds that I loved.
I
So
remember for on a
yeah,
similar thing, AM
yeah,
radio, but like a tape deck, so I could record it when I was in like grade six. So I don't know what
yeah,
year that, 92 or something. And it was that exact thing you just said, American Top 40. And I would discover stuff like Metallica. So I got into them, like they
yeah,
went Nothing Else Matters, one of the greatest songs ever. And for what's his name? Del the Funky Homo Sapien at the time, who I ended up doing a song with not too long ago. Had
yeah,
grown up listening to that, like all these eclectic things through that top 40 that like
yeah,
it's interesting because kids today probably wouldn't be able to resonate with radio being a thing. And if you
right.
just listen to the top 40, you got everything. And once I discovered hip hop, there was and keep in mind in Australia, it was not the thing. Like we were so outliers. And there was one radio station called PBS FM. It was like a kind of like PBS TV in America, like the alternative sort of more public broadcasting radio, and they had these two. They on Friday night they had the R&B show, on Saturday night they had the hip hop show. So I would stay up, tape it, and then the next day I would make it into mixtapes. The songs I liked, I would do the two tape deck thing, make them into
Mhm,
mixtape. Once again, kids these days couldn't relate, but that was the only way to access music before I had any money to go to any record store in Australia had imports. So
mhm.
like how much was a CD growing up for you? Maybe $10 or something?
Yeah, something
Like
like
yeah,
that. Yeah.
if I was going to get something that didn't get a local release in Australia, I'm paying Australian dollars like $40, $50 for a
Wow.
CD, which in the 90s is obscene. It's such a lot of
Sure.
money.
Yeah.
So like it was tough being a fan of the genre that like it was good to be exposed in the way that we were both discussing. And then once I got deeper into it, it was difficult. The magazines were like 3 months old by the time they hit the
Yeah.
shelves down there and things like that. So it was a little harder to access, which I guess made you appreciate it more.
I've been lucky enough to have a couple people, like I had one Kate from Soviet Union for
Okay.
Russia, and she talked about that when she went and visited America. Like she she spent all her money on records. Like
That's
she
awesome.
starved. She just has no didn't the least amount of money she could food on ever, and just everything, just albums to bring them back
Amazing.
because it's so hard to find. So see, I always like to ask this question, like when I'm having somebody like that's a big Bruce fan or Janis Joplin or whoever, like Jimi Hendrix. But can you remember when you discovered hip hop and what about it spoke to you? You talked a little bit about that late night, but can you articulate what about it?
I think it was, I remember being into, I got a guitar when I was nine, so what's that, 81 to 1990-ish. And I
Yeah,
discovered like Guns N' Roses, Metallica through that, for the Black Album, grunge and Nirvana was starting to pop off at the time. And I think someone in class played me, and this is pretty corny, but someone played me like Vanilla Ice, Ice Ice Baby, which was popping at the time.
yeah,
I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I didn't know what a lot of these words meant. I was like, this is cool. And then I think Crisscross came out around the same time, 91-ish. And they were more my age. And they
right.
were cool and they were wearing the pants backwards. It was a gimmick. And I was like, this is fun too. So I dug, I was enjoying that. And I was keeping it kind of low key. I wasn't going too hard. And then my parents owned a toy shop growing up, funnily enough. And their business partners, their kid, who was younger than me, he showed me Snoop. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, this is gas. And then we got into Dr. Dre and then Cypress Hill and Ice Cube and all this stuff, NWA. And then it was like, I guess it was like, it was so naughty. It was so like, whoa, you're saying these words? You like, they're the words we like to say in the schoolyard. Like they're saying
Yeah.
it on a record. I couldn't believe it. And it was just was felt so like raw and it's so foreign to me. I'm a little white kid growing up in the suburbs of Melbourne, Australia, and then these dudes from Compton or whatever talking about all this crazy life that I could never relate to. And just the beats were so sick, unlike anything any other genre that I'd been exposed to. I was like, it was like a pull, and I liked anything that like if you, I don't like authority, so if you tell me I can't listen to it because they got the big parental advisory and I'm 13 years old or whatever, I'm like, that's what I want to listen to. And
Oh
I
yeah.
imagine probably a lot of kids are the same, but yeah, it drew me in from that. And then as you get past the initial like shock value of the cussing and the subject matter, you're like, this is a cool art form. And then it made me want to try it. I always liked words, and then you started to like want to participate in it a bit. But in the mid '90s, there wasn't really anything happening in Australia like that, or if it was super niche, and I was probably too young. But yeah, man, it stuck with me.
I that's a great story. And yeah, I do think that the parent advisory probably sold more records. That was the
It
best thing, right? One
really
of my
was.
yeah, one of my favorite stories is I'm a big Penn Jillette from Penn and Teller fan. He
Yes.
does a great
Mm.
podcast, and he talked about that he can't stand with when a kid, like a teenager, talks about loving classic rock, right? And he goes, "No, you should find a music that pisses off your parents because that's what rock and roll is. That's what
That's
you're
so
supposed
true.
to be at a youth, right? You're supposed to
Yeah.
find that." So that's pretty cool.
I never thought
Uh,
of it like that. Yeah, because otherwise, if your parents think it's okay, then it can't possibly be cool.
yeah, and when I get that, I'll have second or third generation Springsteen fans joining me, and they grew up listening to Bruce and they love him. It is, I also have a fair amount that, no, that's dad's music, that's mom's music. And only
Totally.
later, in fact, I joke a lot that a lot of people go through a spell where they can't stand their parents' music. And then when they get 30, they go, oh, that Johnny Cash guy? He's
Not so
pretty
bad.
good. Yeah, not so bad. Yeah. Uh,
Hilarious.
yeah, and I do think that my son, he went through that spell too, right?
Mm.
Where, and I remember there was an Eminem CD, and my wife was listening to it and was just shocked by the words. And she took the CD out and she threw it out the car. And my son
Amazing.
Chris is, that wasn't my CD. Now
Oh,
we have to buy a CD for Tony. And we made a joke about, I had one of my best friends said, I've heard your wife talk, and anything on that CD, she has said those words. So, yeah.
always a little bit hypocritical, and I guess
Yeah.
our parents would never have grown up with that type of music or that level of explicit content that sort
Yeah.
of, and it wasn't on the radio, particularly even Eminem was
Yeah.
that like early 2000s or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can understand from their perspective, and yeah, it probably wasn't the greatest idea to have a 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old listen to that stuff, but that turned out all right. Look, I'm
Exactly.
sure your son did too.
Yeah, he did absolutely. And then once you get used to it, you see the beauty of that music and
Good point.
the way they're using the lyrics. And I remember a couple of years ago when they first showed Hamilton like on
Mm,
streaming, and I said, okay, I'm gonna put captions on, Linda. And I said, let's give it 10 minutes. And she immediately was captivated by the storytelling and the music.
yeah.
And so there is a beauty to it. So you're loving this music.
Yeah.
What was the first step in making it yourself? What was your first step you did?
Just writing at home, maybe I was 15, 16, writing stuff down, talking about things I had no idea about because I thought that's what you had to talk about. And I was like, I could put this together, but I just didn't know what to say because I had no life experience. I just didn't really know.
Right.
So I was trying. Then as I got older, I just kind of slowly kept trying casually, freestyling, whatever, messing around with friends. And then I think around must have been I must have been 19, 20 or something, and I actually was like, no, I met a bunch of people who did it, who rapped too, and I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And no, I was 18. I remember I met these dudes, and we had this little group who didn't do anything. You have these guys, and everyone's rapping. I was like, okay, but I was like really serious. Everyone else was messing around, and there's one dude who was serious. So me and him and this other guy ended up starting a group, and I met these other. It's such a wide story, but longer story.
No,
But
that's okay.
there was a dude I went to high school with who was the only other guy that I knew who was into rap, and didn't talk to him after high school. One day I went to a Naughty by Nature show. It was April 8th, 2000, never forget. And his group opened. I'm like, is that him? I'm like, I know this guy. And he's rapping on stage before Naughty by Nature. I'm like, I can do this. So I found out who that group was. I reached out to the main dude who ran it. There was like a bunch of them, independent artists, but they were like a collective, I guess. And he was a producer, so he agreed to produce for us. Funnily enough, so me, one other dude, and this other kid who was a younger brother of my younger brother's best friend, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. I
Sure.
was like 20, he was like 14. He was a part of the group. So he wasn't allowed to come to the studio because he was 14, but he was great at rapping. Fun fact, he became this gentleman named 360, who is 6 times platinum rapper in Australia.
Oh,
So
how funny.
which is pretty wild. So he's still doing great, killing it. Went through his whole, he fully manifested success. It was crazy. Rockstar phase, drugs, rehab, the whole works. He did it all. But it was just trippy because we were just kids trying to put it together. So yeah, we started from actually doing that, paying this guy to make beats from us, writing to the beat actually. Because until you can get someone to make, I didn't know anyone who made beats. So you just get instrumentals from other things. It became boring after a while to just write to someone else's song. I'm like, I can't do anything with this. So then you want to actually make your own music. And it was just hard. It was really difficult being based where I was to find like-minded people who were talented, dedicated, because I was serious about it to the
Yeah.
point where I moved to another continent. Yeah.
One of and I'm a big storyteller. There was a guy who was in the local sports talk show host,
Okay.
and he also had in high school and college in bands all the time. And the story is that Stevie Ray Vaughan auditioned for his band and they told him he wasn't good enough. Now, the reality is, because that's the funny story,
Right.
the reality is Mike tells that he's 14 or 15, and he's amazing. He just blows them away. But they're like, the logistics of a 14-year-old and we're playing bars just isn't going to work. So they tell him, we love you, but there's just no way this is going to be practical. But it's a funner story to say that you told Stevie Ray Vaughan he's not good enough to be in your band. Yeah,
That's crazy.
it
Wow. Is he
is.
known as like the best guitarist of all time, essentially? Oh,
I think he's
up
in the
there?
discussion, right?
Yeah.
He's got to
Interesting.
be in the discussion,
That's pretty funny.
especially in Texas, right?
Mm.
That he has this legacy of that Texas blues. Yeah, yeah. Very
That's
nice.
sick. I love
Yeah,
that. That's
yeah,
a fun story.
yeah. So you're using your words, you're a Australian white kid with the desire to do hip hop and rap, and you're like, where are my people? So what was the next step in your journey?
So after we did that first, that those the songs with the story I just told, then I
Yeah,
met this other dude at work, worked at a call center, met this guy, and he was a producer who was rapping, but he wasn't very good at rapping, and he knew that I was doing rap, and then he's like, "Can you get on this song and help me with my buzz?" So got on the song, helped him out, and then we just connected and I just started hanging out with him, he was like signed to this little label that he had like a studio space. So we'd go basically every night. After work, we worked from 5 p.m. till 9 p.m. and then we went to the studio. By the time we went home, got some food, came back like 10 p.m. till 3, 4, 5 a.m. every single night. And it was cool because he taught me about soul music. So he was showing me how to flip samples. And I'd watch him there. We'd be listening to music and we get high or whatever. And then he'd place and I'd be like, whoa, I hadn't heard any Motown stuff really before because mom and dad never played it, never really came up. I knew what samples were, obviously, but I only knew the final
sure,
products. So then he showed me, I'm seeing how he found a spot and then looped, recorded it to Pro Tools and then sped it up and then flipped it and cut them all together. And it was just mind blowing. So we did that for a year and a half, maybe every single night. I'm talking birthdays, like Christmas, everything. We're just always in the studio. It was crazy. And but we got high so much, I messed it up. But we did a mixtape together, which was pretty dope. And that was 2004 that came out. And so I kept still with the other group originally, but those guys fizzled out. The 14-year-old who went platinum, he just didn't wasn't allowed to participate anymore. The other
yeah,
guy just fizzled out as well, as things tend to do. So that project we did in 2004 is called Soul District, which is the group slash the name of the thing. I moved to live in Canada for a year, so they put it out without me on the cover. So I was annoyed because they felt they knew what was happening, but they put it out anyway. without me there because they felt it was too hard to promote without the other half of the guy who's on the
Yeah.
cover of the thing. So fair enough. So we just did, funny enough, that dude came to Canada last year. So it would have been 20 years. And we did a new album, which I guess will come out soon. That was fun. So we did that. And at the time, I was dating a girl who was a singer. So when we lived in Canada, we decided to become a group. And no one had done that before, like that I'd seen like a permanent group with a singer and a rapper. So we did at the time, mid 2000s in hip hop, the big thing was mixtapes. So that was, funnily enough, what I described before I got a producer was you just get the industry beats, Lil Wayne beats, Game, Kanye, like anybody that's cool. 50 Cent was hot at the time. And you would just do your own version of those songs, put them together, put 20 songs out and put it up for download or print them, sell them, whatever. So we were doing that. Her and I did a bunch, but my brother was also starting to rap a little. He was behind me a couple of years, really, but he started to get good. So he was doing his stuff independently. So we both did stuff, and then we were like, why don't we just like form like a crew? So it was her and I, my brother, and then our other friend. So really the four of us, and then we just kept putting music out through the 2000s, tried to do it as professional as possible, hiring photographers, graphic designers. That's when MySpace popped off. MySpace changed everything because now I could reach out to rappers in America that who would never there's no way to talk to them. And now you could go and you pay them a few $100 to get on a song. It was life changing for us being based out there. And then the blog era. So if you're familiar with that, was the hip hop blog era where everything was really it was really all about getting blog placements. And there was this one blogger, his name was Kevin Nottingham. I think that was the name of his website, it's kevin.nottingham.com. So he was like in the conversation of some of the bigger ones, but he was the only one who really supported a lot of the smaller independent artists. So he decided, and he was the first one as well to decide to start a record label, which was more of a distribution label. So because of all the things that we were doing, because we had so many different projects going on, he was like, "Look, can we sign you guys?" So he basically signed all of us, and it sounds cool to say, but it was pretty meaningless at the end of the day. But he was based in Miami, so for us, that was such a cool coastline. So I'm like, in Australia, we weren't getting a ton of traction, just probably
Sure.
the style of music that we were making and the fact that hip hop wasn't overall embraced out there. So that's when we did a radio tour, we called it, of mixed. We took our mixtape, did around the States in 2008, and then I realized we were able to move back to Canada. That's a longer story with the immigration because it's a whole ordeal. But yeah, so we decided to just move back out here. We're like, we can be stick around Australia where no one really cares, and we really want to do this music thing serious, or we could at least be closer to it. So then we'd like an hour and a half flight from New York if we need to, or wherever it be if we base ourselves in Toronto. So we
What
did that in 2010.
what led you to Canada?
In 2004, I lived there because the girl who's the singer who I was dating at the time, she had family in Toronto, and then we found that you could do a working holiday program thing. It's called. America doesn't have that, unfortunately, with anywhere else because that's where I really wanted to go. But I was like, I don't know, Canada close enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just went to Canada for basically it was 7 months in Toronto working. I never even left the country before. We just went straight out. Changed my life. I was a little shy, even though I was doing music, but I was still very shy, not super confident kid. And then all of a sudden, I moved overseas and had two jobs and a phone full of new friends and all this stuff. Like, this is amazing. Get to go to Cuba and New York and all these different places, Montreal. And then we traveled around Canada and the US and Europe for about 5 months after that. So it was a 1 year trip. Came back. I was like, oh, I never want to be in this Australia again. I'm done. So basically, since then, I just wanted to get out. And Canada was the easiest. So at the time, it was a 1 year, once in a lifetime working holiday program. So I just never thought I could do it again. So I was resigned to that. I was dreaming about going back to Canada every probably once a month. And then when we went in 2008, I just randomly, I had a feeling as we're flying into Toronto, I was like, this is where I need to be. And I checked the immigration website and they changed that working holiday program to 2 years rolling until you're 31, because a working holiday program is for 18 to 31-year-olds. And at the time, I would have been, I don't know, 27 or something. So I was like, boom, let's go. So it took us a couple of years to get our act together, but then we moved on that visa. And because I already knew Toronto a bit, that was just an easy way to get into the region. And then through another hour-long story, we figured out how to stay. It
Okay.
was a whole thing.
So I'm gonna beep change tripod legs.
Yes, sir.
So talk about your podcast a little bit.
Yeah,
Where the origin of obviously craft beer. So talk to me about where this started and give me a little bit of the background of the podcast.
for sure. So we started, I was just drinking beer. I was drinking beer in Australia, but not really seriously. I just like trying ones from different countries, different places. And they were typically just macro lagers, whatever.
Yeah.
And when I moved to Toronto, it was September 2010. And then in January, I was invited to a Facebook group called 365 Days of Beer. And the idea was to drink 365 beers over a year, not one a day, but just over a year. And you had to get the beer, you had to take a selfie with the beer. It had to be canned, bottle, labeled pint glass to prove that you had it. And that was a challenge. And I was like, this is my first winter in Canada. It's pretty cold. There's not 300 beers in the world, so let's give this a crack. I ended up completing that in about 7 months, and I loved it so much. Like by default, by posting it on Facebook and everything at the time, I became the beer guy in the people, whatever my little circle. So I just kept it going. My reviews were like, you do a bit of a review. They were ridiculous. I didn't know what I was talking about. I was swearing and just saying ridiculous things. And people kept saying after I kept it going, I think I did 1,000 by the next year. And then people were like, "Oh, you should write a book with them all." I'm like, "No, I don't want to do that. It's silly. It's not even funny. Like I don't know, I just thought it was dumb." So I just kept doing it. Just good little hobby, right? Something to take me away from music because we were very seriously trying to do music at the time. And then I think it was 2015. My girlfriend's like, "Why don't you find a beer podcast? Since you're into beer so much, why don't you listen to some beer podcasts?" And I did. And they were just all like old dudes, like talking in slow, low tones. And it just felt this is not for me at all. This is not exciting. So then she's like, "Why don't you start a podcast?" So I got my friend who I worked with in 2004, who we lived with in Toronto when I moved back. At the time, we'd actually moved to Montreal. And I was like, "Dude, you want to do a pod?" I got all the equipment because I do music. So I'm like, "Come to Montreal," because he came to visit us regularly anyway. And then we just recorded. We started the pod and just did it. Didn't know there was a BF scene, a thing out there. Didn't know there was beer writers or Instagrammers or any of that stuff. So I think there might have been one or two other Canadian podcasts, but not many. Most of them are American. So we were like, we just kept doing it, and we're very ridiculous, overly swearing so much. It was called, can I cuss?
Sure.
Yeah, beer. It was called Beer and Other Shit because that was the name of my Instagram. I would post the beer photos and I would sync it to Tumblr, and that was the name of my Tumblr.
Okay.
Because it's beer and the other whatever was on my Instagram. That was the it was like very silly because I didn't take it serious. So we just called the podcast that, and then a brewery wanted to be on one time. I'm like, what? Why would breweries want to be on and talk to us? So I think we had one or two on, and then there was this big one in Montreal who wanted to be on, but the owners weren't like the marketing lady wanted to be on, but the owners weren't cool because of the name. So then that was, I guess, the fork in the road. You could either be like, screw that up, I'll keep going, or maybe let's clean this up a little bit and take it more serious. So we took that route, called it BAOS, beer and other shit. It was very lazy, but stuck with it. And then now I think we're probably must be the oldest continually running craft beer podcast in Canada. We just had our 10 years in May. We did a big sold out event where we had 40 collab beers that we did, which was all these guys here. It was very intense, a lot of work to logistics, get it all done on time and
Yeah.
everything, but it was leveraging relationships that we'd made over that time. So yeah, we traveled a lot. We'd work with tourism officers. We went to the Virginia's for Lovers, Vermont, visit Colorado, different ones around here and Quebec and stuff. It's been like a pretty crazy journey that I didn't anticipate being on. It was a good distraction from the music when the music was pissing me off, but it just became an identity. So now we're just always doing beer stuff. It's good. Not so great for the old wasteland, but
Yeah.
it's been really fun, man. There's a lot of really great stuff. Met so many cool people, like everywhere we
Sure.
travel. It's yeah.
What's the format of the show? Do you have a pretty
Yeah,
like a rough format?
we do. So we used to do pre-COVID all in person. Then we moved to virtual during COVID via necessity, as we all did. And now I just much prefer it. So we usually record in the evenings and we make sure what we learned was that the breweries who are on need to send us the beers so that we're all drinking the same beers. Because this one brewery did, we used to not do it, but hey, what are you drinking? They're drinking their own beer. What are you drinking? I'm drinking beer from somewhere else. It was
Yeah.
odd and it felt there was a disconnect. And this one brewery did this thing where they sold like a 6 pack, and that 6 pack came with a link to a Zoom where the head brewer and like the marketing guy did like a tasting. Peak 2020, summer 20, you can see how everyone's
Yeah.
losing their minds. This is one way to have some connection. I'm like, that's how you do it. So we started getting brewers to send the stuff. So it's exactly as you told me in the beginning. You don't edit it. I don't edit it either. I think that raw conversation is very key. So that's why I was like, yeah, man, no problem. I'm used to
Yeah.
that. But and we just use the beers as an anchor. Like usually every 30 minutes, we crack a new beer. We go in depth about it. I'll pour it there, takes photos, da. And we usually the pods go from 3 to 5 hours typically. So
Wow.
usually not less than three. Yeah,
Okay.
sometimes, but mostly not. It's because if you do a beer it's 4 to 6 beers every 30 minutes, takes you to 3 hours at least. Then you said earlier you like tangents. I love tangents. So I'm not going to stop you if I've got some ideas. I'm like, we'll
Yeah.
come back to it, that type of shit. So yeah, man, it's definitely deep dive, long form. That's the type of pod that I personally listen to a lot.
Is it the
Hmm.
same beer for that episode or do you guys do different?
So usually it would be 4 to 6 different SKUs, so 4 to 6 different beers from that brewery, and I usually ask
Okay.
them to, depending on the type of brewery they are, like it mix it up between like flagships or one-offs. That
Yeah.
because if people listen, you know how podcast listeners, they're not going to always listen immediately. It might be 6 months down the line they
Right.
check it out. So it would be cool if they could get some of the beers that are on the pod. So it'd be, yeah, 4 to 6 different. So what I usually do right here, I'd always have however many beers, I'd have that many glasses because drinking that many beers in 3 hours will not really super healthy. So sometimes you get excited and excuse me, and you crush them. But I try not to. Try to be responsible. It can get a little like messy towards the end, but I always hold it together. It's never had anything bad. It's just part of the fun of a beer pod and stuff. But I try to be thoughtful with the questions and get the real story behind it. And I feel like the audience that we've cultivated over the last decade have really been the type of people who want to hear these stories, who want to hear the reasoning behind stuff. Why is it called this? And why did you use this ingredients? And why did you guys do it this way? Why'd you set up your brewery that way? And all these different things that the beer nerds really want to hear about. So it's really just like appealing to the niche that I had to learn about almost on the fly. And I'm not educated in beer. All I've done is done 400 or 500 episodes with people who are much smarter than I am in this world and just really tried to soak it up as much as possible. And a lot of them become friends. Like you see them around and you spend that much time with them, particularly drinking, even if it's virtual, you start to become cool. So yeah, it's been one of the most randomest things that's ever happened to me. It's and been very cool.
I love that story. I remember in 2012, my wife and it's a long story and I won't tell it, but we ended up going to Kentucky to do
Okay.
the Kentucky Bourbon Trail.
Oh yes.
Yeah, beautiful. I recommend it strongly. And so there was a guy, and we were in Maker's Mark, and
Nice.
they're talking about how long bourbon has to age. And I heard a guy say, yeah, impatient people make beer, patient people make bourbon. And I think that's an exaggeration, but I do think I think that, and I am fascinated that you'll go to the grocery store or the liquor store and you just see all these different types of beers and just it is and I am not a big drinker, just never developed a taste for it, but
Gotcha.
I'm fascinated by that when they in a podcast they'll say today I'm drinking blank and talking about and everyone is the idea of this is pretty crisp or this isn't or I'm not sure if I this one's going to take some time on it. So I bet that makes some for some fun conversation.
For sure. Which you said you're in Texas, right?
Yeah,
Which city, if you don't, if you can say?
Dallas. I'm in
Oh, you're in.
Dallas.
I was hoping you'd say that. One
Yeah.
of the beers we did right here is from my favorite brewery in Dallas. They put my stupid face on the label there. That should still be available. They're called Celestial Beer Works.
Oh, nice.
So they're amazing.
Oh,
Yeah, so yeah, you really get deep and there's a whole like it's a subculture in the true sense. There's a whole bunch of I don't know if I was gonna say slang, just culture words. Like you
yeah.
call lagers crispy boys. Like, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
having a crispy right now. So you talk all the New England IPAs is just you call it haze or whatever. Or
Yeah.
so there's all different nicknames for everything. And even like talking about the patience thing. So most beers are 2 to 3 weeks fermentation and it's top to bottom and it's good to go. Lagers are anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks, sometimes longer. That's a bit more patience. And then if you did the barrel aged stuff, so we take like a Maker's Mark barrel, you put a stout or a barley wine in it, and that stuff can sit for 3 years
Yeah.
before you would blend it up or make a single barrel stout
Yeah.
and stuff. So there's so many, and same with sours and stuff. So there's so many variants and different ways to approach it, different styles of beer, different regions, Belgian beer, British stuff, German stuff, Czech, then now North America, well, mostly the States, but and that has gone on to all other way, Canada, Australia, New
Yeah.
Zealand, all the hops are from there. Yeah, man, it's more nuanced than anyone would imagine, and there's more styles of beer than there are wine. So beer is actually on paper more applicable to pair with food than wine is. It's just a lot of people don't know it, and people just need to understand the nuances and how deep beer can be, as opposed to the yellow fizzy water that most people
Yeah.
would think of.
My wife Linda does that. She loves going to New Orleans or St. Louis or wherever we're going, and she'll say, "Do you have a local? What do you got? What do you got local?" And
Hmm.
just to taste. And yeah, just in and then it's always interesting, right? The really good servers, what kind of beer do you like?
Yeah.
Before I just randomly pick you one, what you can do. And I remember we were in Lexington and they that was the first time she had the beer that they had in a bourbon barrel
Okay.
and bourbon ale, right? And
Like a
she was,
stout, probably.
yeah. And it was just, oh my goodness, her face like a kid at Christmas. This is amazing. So, yeah, that's
They're
fun.
They are fun, man, and it shows you how when you try that, and particularly if you say you didn't know nothing about that, like yo, that's a fantastic story of someone
Yeah,
reacting to that. Like obviously she was familiar with beer. Maybe she didn't know much about stouts, particularly higher ABV stouts, but then she clearly knew about bourbon and whiskey. And then
right.
you have them together, and you're like, it's you don't even know
Yeah,
how crazy this stuff can be. Like, and that's makes me happy at least that there's someone maybe beer is not necessarily like her big passion or whatever, but
yeah.
if she goes somewhere and she wants to try it, I think that's the type of stuff that's going to keep the industry alive because it's in a bit of a rough spot. I think
Is
it's
it?
beautiful. Yeah, it's bad, man. Yeah, breweries are closing left and center. It's like there's so many elements. As Gen Z isn't drinking, the ingredients are always going up, but there's like a price ceiling that you can charge. There's only so much you can
Yeah,
do. There's obviously a freshness element as well to beer, so it's a perishable product, whereas some like whiskey, you have that bad boy sit around forever.
yeah,
There's now things like the tariffs on both sides of the border is affecting it, from aluminium to grain to hops, all the because Canadian hops are okay, but you can't make any sort of IPAs really without American or New Zealand hops. Like you can, but it's not going to be good. So it's there's so many things that are affecting beer, and yeah, for I think for the first time in a long time, like last year was the first negative, like more closed than opened in the States, according to the Brewers Association. So
mm,
it's looking a bit dire, but it could be like with seeing it almost as a how do you say it? Like it's just too many. There was a beer boom in maybe 2017, 2018. Everyone
yeah,
who always thought about opening a brewery is doing it, but not everyone was good. Not everyone was a business person. They might just make the liquid, or sometimes the liquor wasn't good. Maybe some of the ones that did stay open are just because they've become a neighborhood bar and they're not particularly good. And sometimes the most incredible breweries ended up disappearing. So it's a weird time, but yeah, a lot of mergers, a lot of mergers happening. If that's one way to keep everyone alive, then they've been doing that. And then
yeah,
there's different approaches. The neighborhood brewery approach, and then there's, am I going to go to Costco's and Walmart's and like trying to go in the national, the grocery
yeah,
chains, things like that. So it's, yeah, man, it's a crazy time. So I definitely feel for them. And like I said, these people become my friends and
yeah.
they seem very grateful to us. And I imagine a lot of other people who do what we do because there's like a mouthpiece for the industry, like really talking about it and promoting it. And what's the word? Like not humanizing it necessarily, but like showing that emotion towards it as well that probably a lot of people feel, but don't always hear it expressed. So I see value in what we do as far as that. So
Yeah,
I'm happy it helps if it does.
yeah, and I think one of the really cool things to do is the idea of let's try something different, right? Let's pick up something and bring it home, or let's try something different at the bar and to taste. And the idea, some of them you're gonna love, and some of them you're gonna go, that's not mine. It's
Yeah,
not my thing. And that's why it's really cool. Well, very
definitely.
neat.
Yeah, man.
I know a couple of times a year a couple of different breweries. Like I can't think of the one down in Deep Ellum in
Oh, this
downtown
Deep Ellum Brewery,
Dallas.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, where they'll sponsor the race. It's a 5K or 10K, and so they're like, "Hey Jesse, will you get up and drive us to the race? So therefore we don't have to Uber, and that way we can drink the free beer that we're getting at the end." And it's just a great thing.
That's all.
Yeah. So getting back to music,
Yes.
what's next? What's next that you want to do? What or and yeah, let's start with that. What's next? What do you want to do creatively next?
As far as music, I'm in an interesting spot with it because we did it for so long. I believed in my soul that we were going to make it into a career. And it didn't quite pan out that way. And I'm not mad about it, but it took me a little while to come to terms with it. Particularly once I turned 40 and the more gray I got in my beard, I'm just like, it's a very much young person presenting genre. And it's such a young genre that we don't have older people typically come into the game to do it. If usually you haven't made it by 30, it's like give up. So I was like, okay, now I'm 40. What's gonna happen? I was like, you know what? Cool. Let's just keep putting stuff out as I feel the creative need to. Like we put out so much music over the years, and now just like the joke is podcast mics should be like $100,000 because everyone's got a podcast. Similar thing with music. Everyone is just doing it because they can. Most people don't actually care about it and haven't given it what I think it deserves. And like they don't really care about the music. They're just doing it to get clout or whatever to leverage that for something else, which I think is whack, being that I actually care about it. So I'm like, I'll just do stuff as I feel like it. So, like my friend who we did that album called Soul Districts in 2004, he came up to Toronto in November last year. And he had a hotel for a week every single day we went in. We already pre-wrote most of it, but wrote more, recorded everything in his hotel room. So now he's putting it all together and mixing it. And we'll release that. And that was pretty fun. I was like, cool, that was great. It was fun to get back into the creative swing and know that, oh, I can still do this. Like, all right, that was good. I'm proud of this. This is really good. This is arguably better than the last stuff I did. Still got it, but yeah, my brother and I have been talking about doing an album together. We've been talking about that forever. So we casually started that, but I'm in no rush. And it's nice, man. It's nice to not have that pressure because I've always had that thing like, gotta get this out, gotta do a video, gotta
Yeah.
do that. And now I'm just like, I don't care. Just I'll put it out if I feel like it. I'll do it and I'm going to enjoy it more because I'm not stressed about it, which is the whole. That's how the beer podcast started. Now the beer podcast is more serious and gets me stressed, whereas the music I don't care about. I'm like sick. I can just do it as like a hobby. So I'm not particularly fussed about it. I'm at other people who I've tried in my age group who started at the time as well and stopped doing music have said to me, "We'll always do music. That's just how we all connect. It's how we just it's what we do."
Sure.
Yeah, shit, you're right. So it's just more about reframing that in my mind. So yeah, I feel like I'll just keep doing stuff, but I've got a really nice body of work that I'm proud of that I'm like, if there's still obviously many people to discover that. So I feel like it all holds up in my opinion. I'm just still proud of people who heard that for now, and then we'll just see where it all goes. But yeah, no rush
Is there anything creatively that you haven't done but you still want to?
within music
Or
or
podcasting?
anything.
Anything.
Huh. Oh, yeah. So the social media agency, which is that third leg of the old tripod there, we have the agency, but on this topic, we also have a YouTube channel. So we do education on social media. So we have the YouTube channels come is at 85,000 subscribers. And all I ever wanted, I never really cared about awards or anything in music. Everyone's obsessed with Grammys and all I wanted was the platinum plaque. I wanted just that plaque on the wall with the big platinum record and the thing and the cover. So I'm obviously never going to get that. And the next best thing is the YouTube plaque. And we're almost there. So the YouTube plaque is, that means an extra step to me because I think that'll scratch the itch that the music plaque would have because we had to work just as hard. We started that YouTube channel at the end of 2018. So it's the shortest of the projects, even though that business has been around for 10 years. But the YouTube we started later, but that's blossomed into whole membership and digital products and all sponsors and all the working with some massive brands that have come to us. And I'm like, oh, cool. So people are appreciate it. And they like a comment from some lady in British Columbia saying how much we changed her business means more than the client that's paying you all this money. So it's that's been a really interesting one. So I think that's the next thing that we're focused on. So hopefully, Touchwood will get that over the line this year, which is the aim.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to explore your music, where do they start?
So I came up so C because my name is Craig, so C is I used to go by
Yeah.
C4 back in the day, and then I changed it to C. Didn't think that much about SEO. So it's damn near impossible to find. So the easiest ways, if you go to say something like Spotify, my last like solo album that I released was just called Relentless. So if you just put C Relentless, it'll come up and you can go to the artist and then you'll find everything there. That's the
Okay.
easiest way to do it. Otherwise, it's a bit of a pain to find. So that's another thing. Young artists, if you're thinking about it, have an SEO-able name. That'll save
Yeah.
you a lot of headaches.
Absolutely. Is there anything I should have asked you that I haven't?
I feel like we did pretty well. Was I supposed to talk about another artist in lieu of Bruce Springsteen? or we don't
Uh,
need to do all
you
of
don't
that?
have to. You're just
Okay.
you're welcome to if you want to. But
Don't,
no,
d
yeah,
okay. D
yeah.
Definitely don't. My favorite artist is the most problematic artist, and I've had to stand by this by him over the years. So it's probably happier that we didn't really go into that, but I guess a lot of people could probably guess who I'm talking about. But yeah, that way he had to like we were listening to this. I won't say his name. People can guess. We were listening to him in like 2002 before he is like in the studio every night, and he has had the most impact on anything that we've ever done. Everything that we do even to this day is inspired by that dude. It's crazy to see the where he's gone and ended up, but hoping that he'll get his act together.
You
Yeah, who
know,
knows?
that is a awkward thing. I am a Yeah, I remember I watched a documentary
Mm,
multiple years ago about Woody Allen and the things
mm.
that he had done with allegedly with his stepdaughter.
Saw that one too. Yeah.
And I'm like,
Mm.
how can anyone watch his movies? I'm sitting just indignant.
Yeah.
And then I'm a huge comic book geek. And then work broke out about Josh Whedon,
Mm.
who did Buffy, Angel,
Yes.
The Avengers. And all of a sudden, you hear what he's done and you go, oh, but I still love Firefly.
It's hard to reconcile.
Yeah. And then Neil Gaiman, who is one of my favorite
Mm.
writers, that just
Yeah.
came out that
Mm.
he horrible, allegedly, treatment of women. And so you go, it, it is, you have to separate sometimes the art from the artist. And
Yeah.
it can be awkward.
Very much, particularly when arguably this dude's one of the most prolific and one of the greatest producers, rappers of all time.
Yeah.
And then the fashion stuff. This is his brand. Like I've got to the right, these are all his shoes.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm gonna still wear them. It's not, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
It's hard to, I try not to, I feel like he always did problematic stuff, so he always had to stand up for him. It wasn't like the examples you
Yeah.
gave was, oh no, it was like one big shock. Whereas like he's been doing stuff over the years. He's like, yeah, I know, but and I'm always like
Yeah.
standing up for it. And always the joke was like being a fan of this dude is like a part-time job. You always like apologizing for it. And then it got pretty wild. So now it's okay. If you just like reckon, like maybe you have to be like, all right, maybe he's lost his mind, and that is what it is. And as he says, name one genius that ain't crazy. So maybe that's just is what it is. It's part of the game, and maybe it's a shtick that he's gonna stop. Who knows? But yeah, man, I feel you. What do you do? Like, where's the line or whatever? I don't listen to the music that much anymore anyway. It's like here and there, but the clothes I'm wearing every day and the shoes every day. So now I'm like, I spend a lot of money on that stuff.
Well,
Stop wearing it.
think of the millions of people who loved Michael Jackson's music
Sure.
and how influential that was.
Yeah.
And then you get this legacy. And yeah, it's an interesting discussion. And like I said, I had this moral high ground that and sometimes life will, when you're too high and mighty, it will kick you in the nuts
It'll
and
humble you.
say, hey, it'll humble you. And I'm now saying I can't judge anyone's because if that artist speaks to you, if their music speaks to you, if their art speaks to you, you go back to it. You can
Yeah.
love the art, not the artist. So,
I think if I really think about it, I think that's the best take on the situation. And it
yeah,
doesn't mean you approve of stuff.
yeah,
You don't agree with everyone or anything you like. I'm sure you
yeah,
don't agree with everything your wife believes and you still
yeah,
love her. So
yeah,
this is obviously a more extreme version, but yeah, I think
yeah,
everything isn't black or white. There's nuance and there's gray
yeah,
areas. And I think that this is an extraordinary gray area. And it just, you know what? It's
yeah,
not going to hurt anyone if you just listen to it at home and you're doing your thing. You're not shoving it in people's
yeah.
faces or whatever. And you do your thing and enjoy the comic books, enjoy the movies, whatever it is. And
I know that there was a talking about when Phil Spector, right? And it doesn't take away the fact that he was this brilliant producer, but it also can do some bad things. Absolutely,
yeah,
I get that. All right. In a few minutes, I'm going to ask you for some final thoughts and how
yes, sir.
people can reach you. But I end every podcast with what I call the Mary question. And what that
Yes.
is, Jay Armstrong, who was an honors English teacher in the Philadelphia area, he's now retired, but When he was teaching, he would give his students the lyrics to Thunder Road, and they would read it as if it was a poem, discussing the themes and imagery that Bruce explores. And then he would ask his class, do you think Mary gets in the car? See, that was your homework.
It
Do you
was.
think Mary gets in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
The immediate answer when I listened to the song and read along with the lyrics was, yeah, of course. And then I found this like forum from like 2009 where people were discussing and they were tying in this other song called The River and how that he uses the name Mary as a generic name to make it more relatable for any women in the song. So they
Yeah,
felt that the Thunder Road song was more. This is my only context because I didn't have the historical sort of listening
yeah.
to it all. But the yeah that and you probably know all this. I
No,
imagine
no, please.
no. But they were saying that like the river was more autobiographical, like about real people, and I forgot who it was, whether his sister or an ex or
It's his sister. His
sister.
sister, yeah,
That's what
his
it was.
sister. And by the way, her and her husband are still together.
Yes, when they were super young and they got
Yeah,
pregnant,
they got married. Mary got, yeah, his sister
and the
got
family
married.
left and he
Yeah,
stayed.
yeah,
And then they were saying that people got deep about this. I was like, man, this is a whole rabbit hole I could really go down. So I can see why you asked. Because at first I was like, this is an interesting question. And then I was looking into it. I'm like, oh, I can't see. This is like a whole Bruce Springsteen thing. So a lot of people were all different responses, but yeah, folks was analyzing and maybe this is an allegory for something else. I'm like, geez,
yeah,
this is like a little more than I thought. So my gut would be, I guess, without knowing his music, assuming I know it's Americana and there's
yeah,
always like stories, like I'd heard obviously they dance in the dark border and all that stuff in the
yeah,
80s, but like the singles, I'm not like a deep cut guy. So I was like, I imagine he's probably telling a lot of stories similar to country and western, and sometimes those stories aren't always happy. And
right.
if the car that she got in of the dude is potentially going to not lead to a fantastic outcome, then that would probably align with what I would perceive to be a lot of his other music. So whilst originally my first thought without before I read all the other stuff was like, yep, she gets in. Of course, why wouldn't she? He just went and talked her into it for a whole song,
Yeah,
explained all this stuff. And then I was like, okay, then the more I thought about it, was like, yeah, that would make sense to me. If that's a caveat that I don't really have an answer to, which perhaps you can shed some light on for me. But that was my thinking there, that it would fit the narrative of most of what I thought his music could be discussing is potentially not happy endings for people.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's a great answer. My audience is about half and half.
Okay.
About half the people say yes, she gets in. Other half say no. There are some deep cuts. The some of the of female, because there's the line, "You ain't a beauty, but hey, you're all right." They're like,
Mm.
"She's calling him ugly. He's calling her ugly." No, but other people they'll say, "Absolutely, she's willing to take a chance," and then others, "No, she's too afraid." Right? You have to make that choice to,
Mm.
and sometimes staying where you are
Mm.
is easier. So it's a fun
Mm.
way to end the podcast. It kind of buttons up the discussion. So thank you so much.
No
See,
worries, man.
this was a blast. I think we had a great conversation. I just loved spending time with you. If someone wants to reach you, how can they?
Yes, sir. And likewise, man, this was really fun. I appreciate you inviting me on. This is great. Thank you for the awesome questions. I feel like not everyone asks great questions all the time on pods, and I like you clearly you've done this for 10 years, so you know what you're doing. So I appreciate you,
Thank you.
Jesse. Thanks, man.
That's very nice of you to say.
Instagram for the personal, which I guess is fine. CEEFOR on Instagram. I don't really post that much, but the podcast at BAOS podcast everywhere. BOSpodcast.com, BOS podcast on Instagram, on Spotify, Apple Music, everywhere there. And the social media agency is High Season Co. So it's at HIGH Season CO everywhere. HighSeasonCo.com. On YouTube, I would suggest the Instagram and YouTube if you're looking to learn about social media stuff. We make it really actionable, very simple, straightforward, high quality produced stuff that you can use immediately to improve your Instagram. And what's the other thing? Oh, and the music, as we said, search for C Relentless on Spotify, or you can go to my bio on Instagram and all the links are there too. Yes, sir.
Awesome. Thank you so much for spending time with me tonight. This was a
Pleasure.
blast. Let's do it again sometime.
Absolutely.
All
So
right.
down.
Listeners, everyone go check out the website, check out the music. Let's be safe, let's be kind, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.